In a different 1982, a huge extraterrestrial spacecraft touches down on our planet and flies over South Africa. The authorities eventually decide to break into the ship after 3 months of no activity, only to find a bunch of aliens that are hungry since they ran out of supplies a long time ago. People refer to these aliens as prawns in a derogatory manner. There are rumors that a shuttle left the mothership, but no one has been able to locate it. The South African government relocates 1.8 million prawns to the District 9 refugee camp in response to intense international criticism. As the laborers of their species, these prawns, according to scholars, seldom take the initiative and instead depend on higher leaders to command them. The first several months in the region are tranquil despite the military and barriers around it, and it is learned that aliens enjoy cat food. However, as time goes on, humans start rioting because the government is spending too much money on aliens instead of looking after their own citizens, and District 9 turns into a slum, further fueling xenophobia. It doesn't assist the aliens' cause at all that they view some violent acts, like torching cars, as ordinary enjoyment. The neighborhood eventually becomes overpopulated and a haven for all types of crime. Warlord Obasanjo establishes a sizable illicit market in District 9 that deals in women workers and guns. Although the aliens' technology is highly sophisticated, human hands cannot operate their weapons. 28 years later, tensions between residents and immigrants force the authorities to accede to public pressure and transfer the camp out of the city and into a rural area. They achieve this by hiring Multinational United, a producer of armaments, whose executive Mr. Smith assigns his employee and son-in-law Wiekes to oversee the migration. Along with Wiekes' assistant and a videographer, a crew of mercenaries will also be dispatched to ensure his safety and to force any resistance from the aliens. Wiekes objects to the number of weapons the mercenaries have brought as they prepare, but Colonel Venter taunts him and instructs him to deal with it. The crew is transported to the area to cross through the demonstrations in a large convoy of cars, and when a few prawns try to assault them, the mercenaries defend themselves with lethal fire. Wiekes knocks on doors requesting the owners to sign documents notifying them of their eviction, occasionally offering cat food as payment. Some aliens agree to help, while others resist being taken off their planets and attempt to fight, so the mercenaries must carry them out by force in spite of Wiekes' objections. After displaying them to the camera, they discover prawn eggs in one of the homes, which Wiekes then instructs a mercenary to burn. A lot of concealed alien technology is also present in the shacks, which the mercenary seize for the menu to test even though they haven't yet discovered it. Christopher, his son CJ, and his buddy Paul are searching among the rubbish for any technology that has been destroyed in order to get a secret alien fluid. After 20 years, CJ finally discovers a piece, and the gang is overjoyed to bring it home and bring the fluid to a secret area with cutting-edge technology. To carry out their plan, the fluid is created and placed inside a silver cylinder, but just then, Wiekes and his colleagues knock on the door. After hiding the cylinder, Paul rushes outside to deal with the humans as Christopher and CJ hastily return to their own home. Paul, however, is unwilling to comply, so the mercenaries immediately shove him to the ground and seize him by the throat. When Wiekes enters the home to look around, he discovers a number of weaponry along with the cylinder, which he unintentionally activates and causes to spray him in the face. Wiekes attempts to interview Paul after taking the cylinder, but Paul answers by throwing the mercenary inside his home and forcing Wiekes into a blazing fire barrel. When Venter and his other men come, he kills Paul right away before Wiekes realizes he's burned his arm. Following his treatment, Wiekes carries on with his task and ultimately arrives at Christopher's home. When he attempts to offer sweets to CJ, CJ attacks him by tossing it. The humans are enraged by this response and decide to force Christopher to his knees while they search the house, where they find a variety of tools. Wiekes suddenly vomits up a lot of strange liquid while glancing about and is lightheaded. When they pause for a bite, Wiekes' nose starts bleeding, so the crew chooses to remove him for the time being. When Wiekes returns to the workplace to complete his reports, more symptoms begin manifesting. He won't stop coughing, and his fingernails are coming out. Christopher and CJ search the neighborhood for the cylinder and are heartbroken when they cannot find it. At the warlord's headquarters, a group of prawns swaps their battle gear for a lot of cat food, but one of the men murders a prawn to use as food. Because he wants to turn into a prawn so he may wield their weapons, Obasanjo has been employing witches and shamans. According to the witches, he can become a prawn by eating prawn flesh. However, it hasn't succeeded thus far. Later, when Wiekes gets home from work, he finds that his wife Tanya has surprised him with a party to honor his promotion. Even though Wikus makes an effort to be outgoing and sociable, he is ill in every way. He ends up puking in the sink in the bathroom, pukes again as they cut the cake, and then passes out. Wikus awakens the next morning in the hospital. When the doctor takes off the bandages from Wikus' burn arm, he finds that his hand has transformed into a prawn claw. Tanya begs for an explanation, but the soldiers ignore her and shortly arrive to remove Wikus' body in a bag. The doctor contacts the MNU out of fear. Later, the personnel at a lab discovers the cylinder in Wikus' pocket and removes it. After that, Wikus is subjected to a series of cruel tests by the MNU, including using extraterrestrial technology. Unexpectedly, Wikus' new hand carries enough prawn DNA to operate the alien weaponry. Wikus endures pain as they force him to shoot a variety of targets, and in the conclusion, they force him to kill a shrimp, which mentally devastates him. The scientists, executives, and Smith himself agree to execute Wikus when the experiments are over so they may take his organs and blood before he completely transforms into a shrimp. They could produce excellent troops who could use alien weaponry if their DNA included the ideal balance of shrimp and human DNA. When Wikus learns this, he flips out and starts attacking everyone nearby. He also takes a hostage with a scalpel so he can get out of the lab before being shot. As the mercenaries are instructed to pursue him, Smith meets with Tanya to provide her with a false explanation of the situation. On the streets, Wikus takes items off hangers, a child's phone, and food from garbage cans while constantly attempting to conceal his claw. When he enters a store, he sees a fresh broadcast declaring he is a wanted fugitive who contracted a transmissible illness from doing the dirty with the prawns. He attempts to phone his friends and family to seek for aid, but everyone ignores him. He soon finds out why when he realizes why they ignore him. Wikus acknowledges he must travel to District 9 because everyone in the shop flees from him. Here, he scavenges as well and even finds a can of cat food, which he happily consumes before realizing that he is also losing his teeth. Tanya calls Wikus at that very moment to tell him she no longer wants to interact with him because he disgusts her. Wikus is so anxious to have Tanya back that he obtains an axe in an effort to remove the claw when she stops the phone before hearing his justification. He only manages to get one finger though, and the pain is too great to continue. Helicopters from mercenaries suddenly start searching the region for him. Before passing out from blood loss from his wound, Wikus hurries to hide inside a home and bumps into Christopher, uncovering his secret chamber. Later, when he awakens, he discovers himself aboard the alleged shuttle that was stashed beneath Christopher's home. Christopher and CJ respond to Wikus' admission that he no longer has the cylinder by explaining that they require the fluid to restart the mothership's operations and that it may also be used to power a device that will enable Wikus to undo his metamorphosis. It would be hard to get the cylinder back since the mercenaries would kill them right away. In the hours that follow, Wikus endures the anguish of his body mutating as his skin sheds and his torso changes. Suddenly, Tanya calls Wikus again and says she will accept him back and be understanding this time. To trace Wikus' whereabouts, the MNU had Tanya call and set up this trap. CJ informs Christopher that he misses his world, but Christopher reminds him that they need the fluid to travel, therefore they should head to the new community instead. Wikus hears this and feels awful for them, so he explains that traveling to the next zone is just a poor idea because it is even worse than this one. Wikus declares he has a strategy in an effort to save the prawns and return to his wife in a better shape. After that, Wikus visits Obasanjo to attempt and purchase some guns, but he is met with hostility to violence. When the guys push Wikus, they observe his changed appearance, so Obasanjo gives the order to retrieve his claw so he may eat it. While battling the guys, Wikus stumbles upon an alien weapon on the ground. He picks it up and starts firing at random. Its amazing potency instantly dispatches a group of guys, allowing him to take a bag of weapons and flee. When the mercenaries finally go to Christopher's hut, they discover it to be deserted. It turns out that Christopher and Wikus are breaking into the MNU base by detonating the entryway, and while inside the lab, they shoot a few people before discovering the cylinder. However, Christopher also discovers a lot of prawns, including Paul, that were murdered during trials. He can't move due to the shock, which allows the mercenaries time to close in and start shooting. As he reminds Christopher of CJ's destiny, Wikus fires back and dispatches a number of mercenaries, which helps the shrimp come to his senses. Then Christopher makes a bomb out of pieces he's collected around the lab and uses it to blow a hole in the lab wall. Venter and his men chase Wickes and Christopher as they sprint outside and steal an MNU vehicle to get back to District 9. Once they arrive at the residence, CJ starts adding the fluid to the shuttle. Christopher takes this opportunity to admit that he will return in 3 years to treat Wickes since the fluid they currently have is insufficient to run both the shuttle and the healing device. Wickes is enraged and knocks out Christopher before entering the shuttle to restart it. CJ is putting the fluid into the shuttle. While Venter comes and makes threats to kill Christopher, a panicked Wickes tries to pilot the shuttle. Venter and Christopher quickly leave the home as the earth begins to tremble before the shuttle awkwardly rises from the ground. Christopher is forced to watch as his final chance collapses to the earth as Venter instructs his soldiers to start firing, and a missile promptly takes out one of the shuttle's engines. Then Venter's men kidnap Christopher and Wickes and drive off with them. However, Obasanjo's gang unexpectedly ambushes the vehicle, forcing their automobiles to collide with Venter's. The gang then starts firing and engages the mercenaries in a violent battle until Wickes is captured and taken away, leaving Christopher behind. CJ manages to reactivate the mothership while dealing with the shuttle panel in the interim. Wickes is brought to the witches in the gang's base to attempt the ritual using his claw. However, when CJ turns on the mothership, all other alien technology, including the combat suit tucked away in the gang's base, is also turned on. The suit analyzes the scene and determines that Wickes is an ally of the prawns, but that the other members of the gang are human adversaries. It then opens fire to kill Obasanjo and his whole gang. Returning to the mercenaries, some of them question Christopher regarding the resurrected mothership as the remainder of the party pursues Wickes. Wickes is forced to don the outfit and fight them head-on after finding himself encircled. He offers to swap the alien for the mercenaries' release when he sees that they have caught Christopher, but he swiftly withdraws his offer when he overhears Venter telling his men to murder Christopher. To defend Christopher, Wickes kills mercenaries mercilessly out of rage. They quickly return to the shuttle, but Wickes decides to stay behind to